Welcome back to the Interesting Lawyers Podcast. I'm your host, Russell Adler of Lawyer Better Consulting. On today's episode, we have a very special guest, a very colorful guy in more ways than one. I give you Eric Schwartzreich. Eric, thank you so much for joining us.
Russ, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Thank you very much for having me here. I've been knowing you now for 30 years. Full disclosure, I can't believe it. And I'm peacocking today, but I'm not just peacocking today. I'm peacocking every day.
We're going to get to that in a moment. I was going to say you're quite the peacock. And just so we're on the same page, and I know that you're a man of many words, peacock is defined by Urban Dictionary, a true authoritative source, as normally an English gentleman, dresses smartly, and to an untrained eye has the look of a preppy. They have exceptional etiquette and are from wealthy backgrounds. Peacocks have class. So without getting into the background part of it, this is something that I've always admired about you. Because you use fashion to differentiate yourself. And it's obvious that you enjoy it. It's not something that you're just, doing for effect, I don't think. You just like vivid colors, right?
No, I love vivid colors and I love clothes. I went to a boarding school in Maine. So if I ever get in my background with you, I mean, it's an interesting background, but went to a boarding school in Maine. They would have us dress up and wear suits every single day. So it didn't matter, like, if you were not going to class, but for study hours between 4 and 6 in New England at this boarding school, we had to dress up. Now, certainly they didn't have an orange jacket for me to wear.
You would have been thrown out for that, I'm sure.
Probably would have been thrown out, but
Right.
I always liked dressing up because of it. It's just something that was brought up with.
So I was thinking to myself, why does Eric dress like that? How does it benefit him as a lawyer? I came up with a couple of things, and I'm just going to run them by you, and you can tell me if they're true or not. Number one, it attracts inmates as clients. So for those who aren't aware, criminal hearings are held live and in person. The civil ones are mostly on Zoom these days, but the criminal ones are live because the defendant has to be there. Oftentimes, the defendant's in custody. So when they bring in the inmates over from the jail who are in custody, they seat them in the jury box, right?
They do.
And there you are, like a peacock, strolling into the courtroom, truly the center of attention, especially with that jacket, which is blinding me. I think I left my sunglasses in the car. Please turn off that jacket, could you? No, but anyway, I'm sure the inmates, it catches their eye as well. And is it true that on, certain occasions, sometimes you're flagged over by an inmate who needs to hire some high-powered guy like you?
The problem with the orange is that they're wearing orange. So when I wear the orange is the new black, orange is the new orange. So we wear the orange together. So I can relate to them. Sometimes, yes, they do like my clothes, and sometimes I'm a little bit too much for some. But here's what I believe. I do you, or I do me. You do you. Be yourself. That's what's important. Howard Finkelstein, great attorney, was the public defender for many years, helped me, Howard, on Channel 7. I grew up watching a lot of lawyers, learning how to become a lawyer, who I wanted to emulate. And he always said, you got to be yourself. I can't be him. He can't be me. And this is who I am. I am the man in orange. Johnny Cash was the man in black. I'm the man in orange today.
Well, you don't just wear orange, do you?
No, I don't. But I like to stand out.
I was going to bring up that this is our 11th episode, but it's our first one with a live studio audience. Thank you, one person. Eric, might you know anyone in the audience today?
Did you hear that admiration? I mean, it's overwhelming. It's amazing. That is one of my beautiful, looks like her mother, thank goodness, thank God, daughter, Skylar, Sky Rose, Sky Pie, and she's in law school at Nova University, was on my mock trial team. I also teach at American Heritage, and very proud of her. I forced her to come here today and get out of law school. She had no choice, so she is here under protest.
Well, you and your wife are both lawyers, very high-profile people and very smart people, and you do have beautiful children, so it's kind of obvious it's in their genes.
No,
in fact, when I saw the announcement about Skylar in law school, I said, great genes,
They look like Mila. Thank God for that. I really punched above my weight class by marrying Mila, and Mila's a phenomenal attorney, very well respected.
So I have one more reason I've come up with about why you are a peacock and why you dress in these wonderful colors that I happen to personally love. Judges and juries like it. True or not true?
It depends. Howard Zeidwig. I know you knew Howard Zeidwig was a great judge, phenomenal criminal defense attorneys, one of the best. So when I wanted to hone in on my craft, I would go to the courthouse and I would watch guys like Fred Haddad. You had Freddie on your show. Guys like Bruce Zimmett, guys like Dave Bogenschutz, guys like Hilly Moldoff. I would go into the courtrooms and I would watch them. And one time I was in a trial as a young lawyer and I was wearing a very flashy watch. And Howard Zywick came up to me and said, you can't wear that in front of a jury. You have to be, you want to be yourself, but you want to be every man. I mean, jurors might resent that. So sometimes the flashiness works. I don't start off this way. I start off being myself. But when I feel more comfortable, then I'll start bringing out the clothes, and they like it. Because you know what jurors want? They want a show. Trial work is showmanship. Let me entertain you. I might blind them with some of these clothes, but they want to show. You know that, Russell, because I had the opportunity to know you when you were practicing law. And I don't just say this because you're sitting next to me and you're having me on your show, but you were a phenomenal trial attorney, and you know what it's about. You coach, I think, other attorneys and on how to be a trial attorney. So you've got the skills, you've got the goods, and you are one of the best and one of the finest I've actually seen in a courtroom.
Thank you, Eric. But back to you.
I don't like talking about me. I'm actually an introvert, but that's part of maybe while I try and come out of my shell. I like to color within the lines, or like Johnny Cash, like
Right.
they walk the line, don't cross it. But I'm an introvert, and like sometimes I feel more comfortable when I get out of my comfort zone, and perhaps maybe that's why I like to peacock.
The reality is that you're actually a well-known commentator on television. What stations have you commentated on lately? Just drop a few plugs.
I don't know how well known, but I do a lot on Fox, America's News Channel, CNN, Headline News, and all the local affiliates. I've been very blessed and fortunate to be asked to comment a lot on cases, talk about my own cases, and something I really enjoy doing because I'm a frustrated actor. I get my fix in the courtroom, writing and directing, and get my fix going on TV.
I can relate to that in a big way. And we've both tried about 200 trials. I did on the civil side. You have on the criminal side. They're very different, but it's pretty obvious that you're another one of these lawyers who's not only passionate about what you do, but you got that personality. You have that personal magnetism. I noticed that with Fred Haddad. I got a lot of feedback about Fred, and Dan Santinello as well. Great personality, turns on the personality. He's really himself in front of a jury. It's easier said than done, but obviously there's something about you that juries like, or maybe they just want to get the hell away from you in your orange jacket, so they do the easy thing and find the guy not guilty.
They probably do want to get away from me, but you know what the truth is? You want to connect with them. And to me, when I say I'm an introvert, I think I'm a good listener. You really want to be a listener. I don't like to preach. I don't like to talk at jurors. I like to talk to them. I like to be myself. I like to be honest. Most people, they don't like lawyers. They say about we're used car salesmen, and depending upon what the charge is, when you're representing someone on a sex offense, I mean, not only do they think your client is guilty, there's no presumption of innocence. When a jury comes in, they're looking at you like you're guilty. So I like to just be myself, be honest, and to walk in someone's shoes. I think to be an effective trial lawyer, you have to, it's not that you have to agree with someone's position, but you have to understand them. And you have to understand what makes people tick and be able to relate with them. And I think that is one of the most important skills as a trial attorney, is understanding people.
Yep, and I know one of the issues that you've really become a specialist at and well known, in fact, you were the first lawyer to argue this to the Florida Supreme Court, is the stand your ground law. The law in Florida that was passed that's somewhat controversial, that basically says not only is a person's home their castle, so if someone walks in who's an intruder, you can shoot them. If the stand your ground law, as I understand it, is your ground is anywhere you are. So if right now you feel threatened by me, and thank God we're on video, so we know the truth, but if you do feel threatened, you can pull out a gun that you no longer even need a carrying permit for in Florida, and you can shoot me dead and say, I felt threatened, I felt scared, and I stood my ground. How did I do with that?
You did very well. My clients don't even care about video anymore. Welcome to the Sunshine State, where you can shoot first and ask questions later. Stand your ground. I'm a big music guy. I love concerts. I'm a stand my ground. I won't back down. I can't sing for crap, but it just always makes me think of that. I was very fortunate to be able to use the stand your ground law for law enforcement officers. And we went up to the Florida Supreme Court on the word person, because it was a police officer in Broward County that was charged with the first shooting of someone while on duty in 30 years. He got charged with manslaughter and filed stand your ground because there was a person, this young man, marching down Dixie Highway with a rifle, an air rifle, and it looked very real. And he was given commands, stop, 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 drop the weapon. He didn't. He walked into a community, marched in the community with this rifle, turned towards this pool area where there were children, and my officer, after giving command, shot him, and the young man died. And
Wow.
the deputy got charged with murder. Young deputy, never had any issues. We went all the way up to the Florida Supreme Court because we argued the stand your ground law, that he didn't have any duty to retreat. The stand your ground law took the castle doctrine.
Right.
He used to have to not retreat in someone's home, that he could defend himself. So he actually got indicted, filed a stand your ground motion, which allows the case to be dismissed. It's like getting another bite at the apple. The trial court, Judge Usan agreed, wrote this great 30-page order. Wasn't enough for the state. They didn't just go home. They say the defense never rests here. The state never rests.
Well, it's a floodgate situation as far as they see it, potentially, right?
It was, and we won up in the 4th District Court of Appeal. I love oral arguments. Sometimes I wear the orange jacket, not your typical...
Depends who's on the panel.
It does depend upon who's
put
the
several
panel.
in the car, and then you'll wear which one's appropriate for the panel.
Figure it out.
Very smart.
They say that the C students are the trial lawyers, and it's the A students that are the appellate lawyers. I think maybe I'm somewhere in between.
I was
B
a C student. I was a C student.
I was a C student up until law school, but my wife focused me in. But I digress. I tell you, this ADHD is kicking in. But we went up to the Florida Supreme Court, and we argued over the word person. Any person is what the statute says can use stand your ground. And the state was actually arguing that law enforcement couldn't use it because they weren't under the word person. So, of course, obviously, the plain meaning of the statute, all the Supreme Court justices went in our favor, and we won. The case was dismissed. And then I had another high-profile case for a law enforcement officer in Broward County. He was the first officer, Jeremy Kroll, another excellent attorney, and I used it to defend 2 police officers. And I won on motion, and Jeremy won at trial on that case. So it was an experience. As lawyers, we're always arguing, over words, person. Who should I be up in front of the Supreme Court arguing that police officers apply as a person, that they are people too? I mean, that's a given. I mean,
is that because they probably
do.
fell under a separate definition of law enforcement?
Well, that's correct. See, I know I'm talking to, a lawyer, a former lawyer here. There's a separate statute involving law enforcement officers, the officer's use of force. But the difference there is that statute is an affirmative defense. The stand your ground statute's an immunity statute, so you can use both. So you can't use an affirmative defense on the motion to dismiss, but we used it for immunity to get it dismissed. The state didn't really understand that argument. We prevailed, and it was a good day. To me, I represent everyone. I started representing law enforcement because they would see me in the courtroom in cross-examinations, and they came to me, the unions, and they said, "Would you represent our members?" And I never thought about that before, but I've been doing it. I absolutely love it. I represent anyone that gets the tagline D, the defendant, in a criminal courtroom. No client is too big, too small, too skinny, too fat. Doesn't matter their background. Reasonable doubt for reasonable price. But I will go into a courtroom and I will fight all the way.
And as I recall, you started out actually as a public defender in Broward County.
I did.
So you've never been on the prosecution side.
I've been appointed to do special prosecutions and have prosecuted individuals and entities that way on occasion. But yeah, my life is in defense, but I could easily do both sides. How's the sausage made, or how do you make the secret sauce? You have to see both sides. So I could easily probably prosecute as well as defend. It's not a true believer thing to me. It's you have to see both sides. You have to understand people, and you have to be able to say what's on this side, what's on that side, and take the side and run with it.
Right. So a great part of being a trial lawyer is, they're like salesmen. I used to tell people, I'm like a salesman. I sell cases to juries.
Well, it's true.
And you would sell defenses to juries. So it's a slightly different product. But, of course, the thrill of it is, there's these people, you don't even know who they're going to be. And there's a lot of public speaking, a lot of technique. And obviously you're at the point where you've gotten really comfortable at it and good. And that's wonderful. So along the way, however, there's always these great stories that come about.
War stories,
right? And I know that our listeners love to hear good stories. So I want to have a lightning round with you now. So I will. And last night, full disclosure, Eric and I spoke. I said I want your best and funniest stories. I need to keep my listeners awake, just like when you're in trial, you keep your juries awake. But I guess you just have to wear your jacket for that one.
That's enough.
So I've come up with 5 or 6 of my favorites, and here's how it's going to work. I'm going to say the name of the story, and you tell it briefly. You're a man of many words, so let's keep it brief to about a minute or 2 per story so we can get through this and get done on time. Okay? Do you agree? Okay. For $500, A, the fly in the courtroom in the murder trial. Go.
So we are representing a defendant accused of a murder, Michael Gottlieb, and another great attorney, is also a state rep now. And this girl is accused of murder. Now, what do most women do when they see an insect? What do, Russ?
They scream, they freak out. Yeah.
At that, right? I'm doing a bad imitation, but they flip out, they get scared, and I don't want to like stereotype, but that's typically what happens. What does she do? Well, my bad luck is a fly. Bzzz.
Now wait a minute. This is in the courtroom.
This is in the Broward County Courthouse
during the trial.
In the middle of a trial.
Jury in the box.
Jury is in the box.
Witness on the witness stand.
Witness is not on the witness stand, but the jury has just been sworn in, and we go out of our way to paint our client in a certain light because the facts of this case were horrendous. So my bad fortune, and the client had some issues. There's an insect. Yes, we've got insects in the courtroom sometimes. Other things besides insects. Sometimes there are rats in the courthouse too. But we've got insects in there, and bzzz, and it's flying around, and I see that it's making her go a little crazy. So instead of the she stands up. The jury's there, and she's. Oh God! Can I pound on this table here? I don't want to like break the studio, and starts like destroying it, like kills the fly, like right in front of the jury.
Well, did the deputies run over to restrain her?
I don't remember the deputies running over, but I remember I'm trying to restrain myself in my head. I'm like, oh my God, I just spent weeks trying to like get the jury to understand her, and she just killed the fly in a murder trial in front of the jury. So I turn over and I whisper in her ear, well, I guess I can't argue to the jury that you wouldn't hurt a fly now, can I? And didn't faze her. Wasn't fazed.
And was she convicted?
No, she wasn't. We ended up winning the trial. She got convicted of a misdemeanor in the end, which we ended up appealing because here the defense never rests, and we won. The judge couldn't stand her. But no, so to me, when you get a misdemeanor on a murder charge and then you win it in the 4th District Court of Appeal, and that misdemeanor, not at all. It was a winning strategy and a winning case.
Yeah.
So the fly thing didn't really matter, apparently.
And it's great to draw attention from the jury to her and to you, although you're pretty hard to miss.
You think? Sometimes.
So
yes.
I get that. And it reminds me of a few episodes ago, Fred Haddad told us that sometimes when smoking was allowed in the courtroom, he would take the paper clip and stick it in the cigarette to make the big ash column that the jury would be preoccupied with while the government's key witness happens to be on the witness stand. But that's another episode.
Little distraction.
All right, so moving on to lightning round story B. Client offering mints in a mint box filled with Xanax during a trial. Now, I've brought, for demonstrative purposes, a box of mints. So
you keep those things away from me out there because I've already been down that road.
No, just to tell the story.
All right.
Go ahead.
So believe it or not, and you wouldn't believe it, but this is the same client. So we are in trial, and again, the facts of this case are crazy. I don't want to identify the client. I do not want to get into what the facts, but there was a murder charge. So the client had, my wife calls them big mints or small mints, but I don't know, what's the name of the little mint bar? Kind of like this.
Tic Tacs.
But I don't know. It was a tin can like this, and it had the top, and I had bad breath. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened just at that moment. A little too much information. So I said, hey, can I have some of your mints? And she smiled and said, sure. So I opened the top of the mint. I grabbed like 4 of them because they were the little mints, even though big mints, and I like mints. I put 4 in my mouth and swallow them down.
Well, you got a big mouth.
Well, I do have a big mouth.
Oh, sorry.
That's
I didn't
very
mean it
good,
that way.
Russ. I like
sorry,
that.
Not sorry.
Lots of ways we can go there.
Go ahead.
So I swallow the mints. Well, the mints were not mints. They were Xanax. And I think they were like 80 milligrams Xanax, according to her. And I had to do a cross-examination in a half hour. Michael Gottlieb is at the trial with me. This is a true story. He's sitting there. He's like, oh, my God, I can't believe this. So I got up there all looped out because my client dosed me in the middle of trial, or maybe it was my fault by assuming that there would be mints in a mint box. You know what I learned? Never make an assumption. Probably a good story to explain the criminal law and burdens and reasonable doubt about assumptions. And I took the Xanax, and needless to say, I was flying. I was loopy, but I did my cross-examination. So let's talk about this. This trial, we had a fly. We had the Xanax issue. We still won. So perhaps what the moral of this story is a lesson? You need insects, and you need drugs, and that is the secret sauce. You will win a case that way.
Interesting. It's good to know. 4 Xanax would knock me on my butt and put me to sleep.
It knocked me. I'm a large man, though, always battling weight up and down. So for me, it was all right. But actually, I was not too happy with the client. It's a funny story in jest, but wasn't one of her finest moments, one of my finest moments. But like things happening, you know this as a trial lawyer. things happen. You never let them see you sweat, whether you got to deal with that fly. When she's killing the fly, do you think that I'm letting the jury know? Bothers me, poker face. When I'm like looped up because my crazy client just dosed me or I dosed myself thinking they were mints, you can't let them see you sweat. You got to move on. Whether you're sick, whether you've got a cold, the show must go on.
What about the orange as a deadly weapon in the courtroom? Tell us that story quickly.
We talked about public defenders. One of my first jobs in criminal defense, I worked under Al Schreiber. May he rest in peace. What a colorful character, as you remember Al Schreiber. And I was in front of Melanie May, who later, and she swore me in. She's now in the 4th District Court of Appeal, but she was in the juvenile court. And the state of Florida charges this child with an aggravated battery and the two-wit clause, which means what was the deadly weapon? An orange. An actual orange that this kid, that theory was, took a tree, an orange off of a tree, and threw it at another kid, and that was a deadly weapon. Kid wasn't even hurt, but aggravated battery, deadly weapon. So I was amused by that. I'm a young lawyer, so I grab an orange and bench trials in juvenile, which means there's no jury. It's in front of a judge, and Judge May is very smart. And I grab an orange, and I take the orange, and closing argument, I argue that the only fruit in this courtroom is the state of Florida, and I take the orange, put it through my finger like that. And Judge May, she's very serious, but she just starts laughing, and orange juice is dripping all over. This is not how this jacket got orange, by the way.
I was wondering.
Maybe that's how I'm wearing orange. I don't know. And Judge May is like, Mr. Schwartzreich, you're dripping orange juice on my courtroom floor. She just started laughing, and she reduced the charge to simple misdemeanor battery. So I'll take that as a win. So
yeah,
the only fruit in this courtroom is the state of Florida.
Yeah, that's a bit of a reach to say an orange is a deadly weapon. I mean,
you think?
If it's a big watermelon and it's heavy and it knocks someone over,
Here's another lesson I just learned: watermelon, deadly weapon, maybe orange is not. This is good. I'm learning a lot today, Russ.
Never know. And a simple battery could be a grape. Who knows?
Well, grape, I don't know.
Yep. So
sour grape. Maybe.
What about? I know you've done DUI cases pretty much all over the state and DUI manslaughter cases. You got a couple of stories you mentioned to me about some that you did in remote areas. One of them about pre-trying a DUI manslaughter case in a small town at the Elks Lodge. What's that about?
So I believe in putting together a team. So when I try cases, I like to listen to lawyers. I like to be in control. I do believe that there should be a lead chef, but I don't mind working with other chefs and sous chefs and people around me that are great lawyers. So Anthony Bruno and Sheila Zollnor, they've worked with me for many years. We have a case up in Glades County, Florida. And, in this town, there's a drive-through, and you can pull up to the drive-through bar, and you can say, I'll have a rum and Coke, or I'll have a vodka tonic. This one's a cup of rum or any rum. And you can order the rum, you can get the drink, and then you can drive off like in the town while you're drinking, and the one sheriff over there probably doesn't pull anyone over. I was like, wow, like this is some town. So I wanted to what type of town is this before I go up here? Because my cousin
in a
Vinny,
DUI case, yeah,
one of my favorite movies, hence I'm wearing the orange jacket. I'm like, they're not going to have me up here. I'm a Jewish guy from New York. I got this Persian lawyer, Sheila Zollnor, and I got Anthony Bruno, Italian guy from Florida. I'm like, we are not going to play well over here. So we got to understand the people. We want to walk in their shoes, because what do I say? Well, what is the line from To Kill a Mockingbird, the book? I mean, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's all about you need to walk in someone's shoes. So we go up there. We live in trailers. I haven't ever lived in a trailer. I mean, I've been camping, but my idea of camping is a Ritz-Carlton or room service. So we go up there. Well, of course. So we go up. I do like to camp a little bit, though, full disclosure. So we go up there. We live in trailers and double wides, and we join the Elks Lodge. I mean, I used to think of like the Flintstones. Remember the Flintstones?
Yeah.
The Moose Lodge. And we joined the Elks Lodge. It was like $30. Like we bang in the door, the secret door. They let us in. We become friends with them. I get like a free steak dinner. I'm like, all right, I'm going to pay the $30. We were having free steak dinners every night, and there was like 10 people that would go in there. We would pre-try our case to them, and they would say, okay, argue this, don't argue that. They would tell us what the judge is like, what the judge isn't like. And
they're all related sometimes,
they
right?
probably, on this jury, a lot of people were related. So we went up there and we pre-tried this case. We lived there for 2 weeks. I got to know the townspeople. Everywhere we would drive, they would call us by name. And, in this town, the prosecutors come, I think, from Fort Myers. I think it's Fort Myers. They're not even from Glades County. So we're in this trial. I'll never forget it. The judge, the whole time when I got in there, he was reading me the rules. I'm just making sure that he was going to put me in line. It really was like my cousin Vinny. And I do a lot of strategy on jury selection of voir dire when you pick a jury and certain strikes that you can use to get rid of or remove jurors. So I just passed on all mine. And this experienced prosecutor just kept using all of her strikes. So here's a DUI manslaughter trial, and she's left with a police officer from Hollywood, a former police officer that left because he got a DUI, and he thinks the DUI laws are too strong, so he moved out to Glades County, and then a sex offender, a registered sex offender. I didn't even know you could have a registered sex offender on a trial, and the state was out of strikes. Now, I knew that it was a Hobson's choice. It was a poor choice for this prosecutor. Her and I did not get along too well. But she was stuck, and she's like, Judge, I need another strike. And the judge is like, oh, that's going to be denied. And he's kind of like laughing, but he'd been on her side the whole time. She goes, well, one guy left here is Mr. Schwartzreich passed on all of his moves as a sex offender. And, sex offenders are told what to do, where to live. They're not going to have it from the government. Or a police officer with a DUI, and I got a DUI with manslaughter. What do I do? Judge is like, make a decision. And I turned to her, I'm like, pick your poison. Now, she wasn't too happy. We ended up winning that trial, but during that trial, we got to know the town. We lived up there. We're trying it in the Elks Lodge. We put on a show. To me, that was the greatest show that came to Glades County for 2 weeks. And my cousin Vinny approached here. I really loved it. And you know what's crazy about
what was
this
the
case?
verdict?
The juror was not guilty. This juror, the jurors, after they would, sometimes the jurors would call you after the trial and give comments or critiques. And one of the jurors, they still found not guilty, said to me, your client every day would almost run us off the road. He was out of custody. He would get out of court, and I'd be leaving court, and he would almost run us off the road, and he'd be running through the stop sign and speeding down the road. That's like the Fly story.
This is a juror?
A juror that acquitted this guy, and I'm thinking to myself, first of all, sometimes clients are just crazy because you would think you wouldn't go down that road, but I'm jaded. You do criminal defense work, Russell. I see, it's see no evil, hear no evil. I see it all. It's in one ear, out the other ear. But when I stop and I reflect that here's this guy on trial, and it was a very sad, serious case, and motorcycle, his fiance died, and the driving pattern was, the allegations were reckless. And here he is on trial for his life, and he's almost running the jurors off the road on the way out. I guess nothing ceases to amaze me. But as I sit here and I tell that story, I look back, it's something else what we do.
Yeah, it is, especially those small town ones. Sounds like an episode of a TV show.
So I love visiting road trips. The visiting team, I like a challenge, right? The more difficult the challenge from a psychological perspective of understanding the lay of the land as a trial lawyer, and because judges make or break a case too, right? All judges' demeanors are different. So even though I'm comfortable in South Florida, and that's where I practice, I like a lot. I enjoy a lot when I'm on the road.
Right. How do you feel about the saying that a good lawyer knows the law, but a great lawyer knows the judge?
So I think that it's a good saying to a certain extent, but I think that a good lawyer knows the law, and a great lawyer knows not to let the judge mess up his case. Because a lot of times a judge will get involved, or they won't like the facts, or there are some great men and women that are on the bench. All judges are not created equal. I tell my students this, and we've got some great judges in the state of Florida and in this country. Some of them, though, they really get involved. I mean, a judge is supposed to be a referee. You call balls, you call strikes. When you did your days of being an advocate, that was then. But sometimes judges will try to maybe it's not intentional, maybe they can't help themselves. Sometimes I feel like they try and tip the scales. So while I have great relationships with some judges, not with some others, to me I believe that a great lawyer, good lawyer knows the law, and a great lawyer knows not to let a judge mess up his case, and let the judge be respectful. It's his or her courtroom. Let them know that they feel that they're in control. But who really should control the courtroom as a trial lawyer? The lawyers. Yep. It is the animals, the lawyers, not the zookeeper, that really, to me, effective trial lawyers that really make a dent in a courtroom.
I think another differentiator between a good lawyer and a great lawyer is the great lawyer knows the law a hell of a lot better than the good lawyer, because it's no secret that even within particular practice areas, some guys are just fast and loose and they just reel off names of cases, but they don't really know what the law is. And the other side, if they're more prepared, will often have the case law that they need. That was always my experience on the civil side.
It's like that in criminal. You can't be an empty suit. And when I say the defense never rests, I won't sleep. I mean, there's a reason why I've got bags under my eyes and I need to color my hair more often than I normally do, is because I'm just constantly going at it. And I will outwork them. I will remember the movie Bruce Willis, The Sixth Sense, I see dead people. to me, I want to be like, I think like I see dead people. I want to work hard enough where I see the thing, the fact, the runaway train that the opposing counsel doesn't see. And you can't go in there in an empty suit and know the case law, know the research, and that has a lot to do with it too. You just can't show up and say, "Here I am. Here's my orange jacket." You got to outwork them. You have to outsmart them. And you have to be honest, and you have to be true to yourself and true to your client, because we take on causes and positions of people that, like, most jurors, when they just hear the facts, are like, well, he must have done something. And there's smoke, there's fire. This person is in this courtroom sitting next to this flamboyant peacock, if you will. And I'm not always flamboyantly dressed, but it's...
yeah, you are.
You got to
Well, I see you on Facebook a lot,
Well, listen, that's, people always say to me, everything looks so perfect. And I love that. People see what I put out there and control my image. I mean, I don't put on Facebook, do you still get the hard copy Sun Sentinel? Get out of the toilet. Used to read the Sun Sentinel in the morning. Too much information, I know. But people, like, I post pictures of puppies, my family, music concerts. They see what I control or what I put out there. So you don't see me when I'm, like, dressed up.
Right. You never get a second chance to make a first impression, and you make quite a first impression. And by the way, it is not an empty suit by any means. So, Eric, I was thinking, you're one of those guys who, over the years, I'd see you and say, "Hey, let's do lunch sometime." Yeah, we never did lunch. And, I figured that by getting you here on the podcast, I would spend more time with you than I've ever spent. And I have accomplished that.
Are you getting a little freaked out right now?
No, not at all.
Breaking out into a cold sweat?
On the contrary,
Okay.
this being this a special occasion, I'd like to propose a toast.
Oh, Raman, we are toasting to life, and we are toasting to, even though we have stressful things that happen in our life, and bad things that happen, great things that happen, and to sucking the marrow out of life, to seizing the day, to enjoying.
You're here.
Here. Thank you for having me.
We're going to wrap the episode. Sky, when you get out of law school, we'd love to have you here. Maybe we'll do a panel. I'm always looking for interesting guests. And I really enjoy doing the podcast and meeting and interviewing people who I really think are special and especially interesting. And you fit that bill in many ways. So I really appreciate your coming, and hope you can come back in the future.
I thank you for having me, and I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, Russ.
And that concludes today's episode of the Interesting Lawyers Podcast. This is Russ Adler from LawyerBetter.com. And that's my website if you'd like some more information. We'll see you next time. Thanks.